All right, you should be good.
Thank you. If I remember correctly, Robin Williams did a movie about Good Morning Vietnam. Well, Good Morning Finance Committee. Let's call this meeting to order. Do a roll call.
Akers,
Here.
Buckley, King,
Present.
Milton,
Here.
Pinkley,
Here.
Romine, Simmons,
Here.
Yancey,
Here.
and Dobbins.
Here.
Okay, Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We have the regular agenda and begin with item number 1, approval of the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting of December 17th. Is there any motion there to approve those minutes?
This is Yancey. I'll make a motion to approve.
This is Larry. I'll second.
There's a second. Any discussion? Any updates or corrections or any items? And if you're ready to vote, I would, do we do a roll call since we're this way? And I guess that's what we'll have to do, Melissa. So roll call vote to approve the minutes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out where this is. We're in a new system, and this is my first time using it.
Okay. You're not the only one that's been there and done that. So.
Okay, I will just call it because I am not seeing how to go in and add those at the vote. It's not pulling up for me. Akers,
Here? Yes.
okay, Dobbins.
Yes.
I'm so sorry, let me look at everyone's name here. Pinkley,
Yes.
Buckley, absent. Romine, absent. Yancey,
Yes.
Milton,
Yes.
and Simmons.
Yes.
Okay.
We have,
Mayor-
have approval.
Yeah.
Thank you. Presentation of the regular reports. Jamie, I believe are you going to do that or is Melissa?
I will go through the sales tax reports, Mayor.
Okay.
Sorry, I was on mute. Melissa does the tax analysis for you all, and then I'll go into the financials.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So just real quickly, before I start on the sales and tourism tax reports, I just want to let you know that one thing to keep in mind when we're going through these is that we believe that a combination of COVID and Christmas may have had some influence on the timing of our receipts on both of these types of taxes, so both sales and tourism taxes. So that's something that we're going to keep an eye on and look at more closely next month. We'll be able to see if there was maybe some impact that caused some, some differences in the receipts and the numbers. So first off, we have our sales tax, our receipts for January, which is mostly November business activity. We're down 21.2% compared to the same month the prior year. You're going to see basically the same numbers on the 0.5% transportation tax and the 0.5% public safety tax. Those were both down 21.4% compared to the same month last year. And we've seen essentially at this point that on both those half-cent sales tax that the gap has closed. So total receipts for transportation tax were $468 and $12 and public safety was $467. I just point that out because at the beginning we did see a little bit of difference, but now those are lining up pretty closely each month. Moving on to the tourism tax receipts.
Excuse me, this is Larry. What report are we on?
I went through, I'm sorry, the sales tax here, so it was down 21.2% for the month.
Oh, I
and
see.
then
Yeah.
as we're looking here at the transportation, it was down 21.4%, and that was the 468,000. Public safety was also down 21.4%. And this is where I was talking about the gap was closing, because we're still receiving, prior payments on the transportation. So there's always going to be a little bit of a difference, but I was just pointing out that at this point, they're essentially the same point or a same amount each month.
And Melissa, you pointed out, these are figures that actually are the end of November.
Yes, this is mostly November business activity. So next month we'll still receive some November receipts, but it will be mostly December business activity. So just as a reminder, the sales tax is processed by the state and then sent to us. So the state processed November business activity in December, and then we receive those payments in January. Okay. And then the next report here, and I apologize, I moved over to the new year, and so I think what got published out is not, don't look at this column yet, we're looking down here. This is our monthly receipts for tourism tax. So what it's showing is we were down 39.4% in December receipts. This is also mostly November business activity. It's essentially the same business activity month. We just report it in a different month because we receive the tourism tax receipts here in-house. Okay. And then again, I apologize. I must have just grabbed the wrong receipts here, but let me pull up the correct report that's published out on the website. It's just advanced to the next month here.
And while she's doing that, I'll just say a few things about the tourism tax. Just keep in mind, when we did the COVID financials, we projected a 45% decrease. Basically, it was worst case scenario. And so you'll notice that while we are still down about 39% for the year, we projected a 45%. Now, with that being said, so we knew that 45% was worst case scenario. So the city was sustainable if we could do 45% or less. We managed that so far. And so with that being said, I want the message to say, yes, it's better than what we projected because we projected worst case scenario. However, being a realist that I am, we are still down 39%. So that's two different ways to look at it. So just keep that in mind when you're viewing these as well. Go ahead, Melissa.
Okay. So,
Jamie, just a
yes,
moment.
sir.
May I ask a question? This is Ed.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at the report and it says 33.4. You're referring to 39%. Where's that figure?
That's on the same month comparison. The 33.4 is year to date. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
You see the 39.4 is the same month comparison. So the 33 is overall year to date. And you'll see this is just through November. So when December comes in, you'll see the real year to date. Because if you keep in mind, us being accountants, you understand that accruals, the 2 months of November and December, those are actual receipts for January and February that we accrue those back in for the years for the financials. So
Thank you.
You're welcome.
okay, so this is the report that is published out on the website, and it's also the one that I email out to the committee at the beginning of the month. So what Jamie was saying here is December was down 39.4%. So that's what we spoke to, that we think maybe Christmas COVID caused some delay in the receipts. And then year to date, we were down 33.4%. So you can look here by classification. So at this point, year to date, all classifications were down compared to last year. Not a surprise given COVID. And then on the same month comparison though, when we're looking here, amusements were actually up, as well as campground. And then you're looking at theaters, hotels, motels, nightly rentals, and restaurants and concessions were all down for the month. So again, this is November business activity.
Just a comment, the same month comparison, lodging down 47% and theaters down 59%. Those are obviously two of the larger line items, and that's troubling.
I agree with that. This is Michael, and also, but it's interesting that we were up 55.2 on campground. So that's good.
Well, and that also tells you and paints a picture for what people were more interested in during the year of COVID. So outdoors, amusements, type of deals, those kind of things. So that it does paint a picture that's really in line with the rest of the country's economy.
Yeah. And Michael, just to comment on that, I know the campgrounds are up, but it's $135,000 figure, right? Versus a $3 million figure.
That's correct. But also the nightly rentals are only down 9.2. So that tells you where people are going, and they're coming to visit, but they're not going to theaters
That's
and other.
And lodging. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on to the next report then. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the rolling 12 report here. Okay, so if you remember on the rolling 12 report, this report is updated on a monthly basis where we go back in and we put the actual business activity receipts into the month that they actually occurred.
Melissa,
So-
could you zoom in on that report, please? That it's a little bit hard for me to see. I'm sure others have the same problem.
Sure,
Thank you.
is that better?
Yes, that's a little bit better. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So right now we are looking at October receipts. So this one does take a little bit longer just to get in to make sure that we have all the receipts and we're actually able to compare on a more accurate basis. So right now it appears that October is down 15.2% compared to October of 2019. And then you can look down here along the bottom. So it breaks out by the taxing area. So you've got Branson Hills, Landing, Downtown, Branson Meadows, 76, etc. So you can see that actually Branson Hills was up this October compared to the previous October, while all the other taxing districts were actually down compared to last year. The second page of this report, you're essentially going to look at this as if this was October 2020 was our year end, we would have seen a negative growth of 16.5% in the economy. So that is in the year of this global pandemic, we've seen a decrease of 16.5%. Again, most areas of town are down compared to the same 12-month period the prior year, except for Branson Hills, and it is flat. Does anyone have any further questions on this report? So we'll go back here.
Just a comment, Stan, would it be helpful for us to get some figures from some other tourism destinations to see what their figures look like based on how our figures look?
We could if you wanted us to. Everybody's running about the same from what we've seen, but I'm sure Jamie could come up with those.
Well, those that are more like our operation, more, but nobody's really like us. That's the interesting thing.
Well, we have some comparables that we use. So we do like Tennessee, obviously, Sevierville, Gatlinburg. We also use Myrtle Beach. Some of those that have more tourism destination like us, we've tended to use those. We have about 5 of them that we use. So
Great.
if you want us to reach out to those to provide you with a report, I can certainly do that. No problem.
It'd be interesting to compare actual year-end stuff with them, just to see what it looks like.
Sure, no problem. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And Jamie, you'll send those out to us when you get them?
Yes, sir. And now keep in mind, it is year end, so it might take me a little bit. So maybe by next finance committee, if that's all right.
You bet.
So our next report here is the unrestricted tax reports. So here in this first column, we have the actual tax receipt. So just like the sales tax reports that I presented, this is mostly November business activity. So we are looking at whenever we subtract out for the Branson Landing and the Branson Hills TIFs, we are seeing a decrease of $246,000 in actual receipts that are spendable, that are not restricted to those TIF payments in our sales tax. And then moving down here for our tourism tax for the month, we saw a decrease of $557,000 in spendable dollars. And year to date on this report, we are down just about $4 million. Does anyone have any questions on this report? And then our last tax report here. So these are going to be our monthly budget. So for the first month of the year, we are looking at a decrease of 6.6% compared to what we would normally expect to receive for January. And so of course, year to date is also 6.6% because we only have 1 month on
Melissa,
our tourism tax.
This is through what month? Because we get this quicker than the others, right? What month end are we looking at on the 1% sales tax?
So this is November business activity. This one is the one that the businesses pay into the state in December, and then we receive in January. So this one has a 1 more month delay than the tourism tax does whenever we report it.
Yeah, we'll know a lot more next month. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, we will. Yes. So our tourism tax, the one that we collect in-house, we were looking at a decrease of 39.3%. Again, this is November business activity. So that is a decrease of almost 40% compared to what we would normally expect to receive for the month, and ending the year at a decrease of 34.3% to budget.
So if I might interject here, I want you to remember that we redid, I say this all the time, but I just, as a reminder for you all, we did in May a COVID financials. This is the budgeted financials. We did in May a COVID financials as a result of the pandemic. So this is where we would be if we had our original budget. But as you are all well aware that we, about 5 months in, stopped using our original budget and started going to a much more decreased budget based on some of the things that we did as a result of COVID. So I just wanted to interject that there so you saw the real picture. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor, that concludes my report for the sales tax.
All right. Melissa, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. The review of other reports. I guess you shared that you would be doing that, Jamie.
Yes, sir. So we'll start with our financials reports. And as Melissa said, we're using a new software. So she's going to be putting them up on the screen. I'm just going to be going through them. So if I'm going through too fast, please stop me. Let me know. I tend to speak fast anyway. So, but I'll try to hit the highlights to some of the anomalies that I tend to, so that you can see what the real picture is. Melissa, if you want to move to the general fund. Thank you. And maybe zoom in a little bit. Thanks. So for the general fund, as of the end of November, our revenues were $16,679,490. In comparison to last year at this time, $19,218,159. Some of the things that you will notice is our sales tax is greatly decreased, and we've already gone through that. But many of the other items on this list are decreased as well. Our leases and rents, our licenses and permits, our miscellaneous revenue. The miscellaneous revenue is really the one that doesn't typically have anything to do with COVID. It's one of those things that we don't really budget. We wait for budget amendments because we're not sure of everything that's going to come in. However, the 2019, we got 118, and that was as a result of a large insurance check. So we don't have that this year. What's involved in that category this year is really our P card rebate and our recyclables. So if you move down to the expenditures, yes, sir.
Before we move down, under the lease and rents, I know we amended the lease, some of the leases out at the airport property. Other than that property, what else is in that number of the reduction of leases and rents?
Those are all, a majority of those are our West 76 leases, and majority of those sales is as a result of their gross sales. So we
Got
get
it.
a
So it's a
percentage of the
base-
gross sales, and that has largely impact due to COVID.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have any more questions? And I'll keep going if we don't. Okay. Expenditures were $7,530,935 in comparison to last year at this time, $7,343,607. I will point out the non-departmental line on that is quite a bit bigger, larger, I should say, than the previous year. The reason for that is the CARES Act money. So we had to find an account, which we put in a non-departmental, that we tracked all of the expenses that we turned over to the county for the CARES fund. So $140,000 of that money that's accounted for in our November 30th, 2020 is money that we've turned over to the county to get reimbursed through the CARES fund. So I just wanted to point that out to you. Also, ballparks, the money that we've spent to the ballparks is in that versus last year. We've spent about $290,000, which is accounted for this year versus last year as well. And then also the housing authority money that we spent to acquire that property and to demolish those buildings, that's also in there as well. So those are some of the things that aren't really comparable to last year that I wanted to point out. That's one of the differences.
Excuse me, Jamie.
Yes, sir.
On those, would it be more clear if we had those broken out instead of combining them as non-departmental, if those were line items?
Well, in our line item, in the line item budget, we do have those broken out. There is a separate budget worksheet for non-departmental, and it itemizes each one of those that are a regular. Some of them aren't regular, but some, like the housing authority, and that will go into what I call a 2099 is basically how we track those. But the regular ones, like the ballparks going forward that we have contracts for, you'll see specific line items for that in those budget worksheets.
Okay. And I don't know if this was off topic right now, but on the money we submitted to Taney County for reimbursement, have we received any, or do we anticipate receiving funds?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We've already received phase 1, and we've already been promised phase 2. Phase 1 was about 19,000. We've already received the check for that, but you won't see that in this month. So you'll see that. I know we're about to get the one for phase 2. Phase 3, they're working on. They haven't made the determination yet, specifically because their funds, they didn't have as many funds, and I know that they're working with the state because they've recently got an extension date for those. So phase 3 yet we have not figured out, but phase 1 and 2 we have, and we know we're going to get that money. Like I said, we've already got phase 1s.
Okay, but it's just not reflected in these reports.
It won't be reflected in November's, no, sir, because we hadn't had the check.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then I'll continue down to the other financing sources. And, you know, these are our transfer ins and our transfer outs. And typically you'll see a lot of the debt service transfer outs in this one, $8,735,764 in comparison to $10,776,000. Now, with that being said, when I tell you it's the debt, so it's the performance of the landing, the performance of the hills, the performance of those TIF structures. Some of those will be down as a result of COVID. So what comes in transfers out, if that makes sense to you all. Also, the public safety fund transfer and the park funds transfer will have been decreased as a result of the COVID. So those also will have been greatly decreased in comparison to last year. So when you're comparing the two, those are some of the anomalies that will have taken place as a result of COVID. The bottom line is our unreserved fund balance as of the end of November is $6,523,181. Is there any more questions on the general fund? If not, I will continue forward. Okay, Melissa, do you mind changing that, please? Thank you. Okay, this is your public safety. This is a picture of your public safety funds as of the end of November 30th. 4.9 million versus 5.4 million from the prior year. Obviously, our taxes are down. You will see the intergovernmental up a little bit, but that's because we got a grant for the SCBAs earlier in this year, and that was to the tune of 314,000. So that's why we're quite a bit larger this year than last year. The expenses are 9.7 million versus 10.6 from last year. Keep in mind, and I probably say this every month, but I want it, when you look at 2019, keep in mind the fire truck is also in those expenses. So we bought a fire truck last year, which is going to make those expenses appear higher. So when you're comparing the two, you might want to, some of those trend analysis, that's what's causing the trends to skew a little bit. We also have the expense of the SCBAs on this year. So there's one-time expenditures that will always be wrapped up in some of these years that I will try to hit and explain for you all so you can see the difference.
Jamie, on the fire truck,
Yes,
we
sir.
purchased it in 19, but I believe that purchase was reflected in our 2020. Is that right?
No, sir, the expense purchase was reflected. It was January of, no, it was 19 that the fire truck was expended. We didn't receive it. We paid for it. We didn't receive it for a few months later, but the expense is reflected in 2019's.
Okay, so then the fire truck,
So if you look at the expense, it's 10.6 in 2019 versus this year it's 9.7.
got it.
You know, keep in mind, we did do raises and stuff at the beginning of last year, so that you would have thought that the expenditures just for operational purposes would have been a tad bit higher just due to some of the increases that we have year over year, but they're not. And a large part of that is due to the $1 million fire truck we extended in 2019. Does
Thank
that
you.
make sense? Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so the other financing sources, these are our transfer, a large part of the transfer ends from the general fund. And I explained that earlier, that as a result of COVID, that was cut back by 25%. So that'll be reflected in this year's versus last year's as well. And that is the ending result of the unreserved fund balance is 6.1 million in public safety. If there's any more questions, I'll just pause for a minute and then we'll keep moving. Melissa, Convention Center, please. And then, so the Convention Center, 1.9 million versus 4.7 million from last year. Obviously, COVID had a large impact on the Convention Center this year. 3.1 million, almost 3.2 for the expenditures versus last year, 4.9. Here's the caveat here. Our transfer ends to the Convention Center as of the end of November. It will have gotten larger for December, 936,000 versus last year, versus 2019 of 336. So when you're thinking about all the financials, the Convention Center was hit pretty hard with COVID, but because that one was hit, it also had a large impact on our general fund because that is a transfer out that we hadn't accounted for. But thankfully, we had some reserves set aside that we could do that with, which helped the economic impact of our city. So I just want to kind of wrap it all up into one picture when I'm talking about it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it. But the end result is their unreserved fund balance as of the end of November is 326,983, which I might add is fairly low. Is there any questions for the Convention Center? If not, we'll keep moving.
Jamie,
Yes, sir.
the net difference, I know the convention centers in many communities just closed down altogether. And this is saying that our convention center, by staying open, generated 1.9 million in revenue. And I think you just said a $900,000 loss, a subsidy from the city. Do you have any idea, or I don't know if Sam does, what that number would have been had we closed like other communities?
I do not. We've talked about that analysis for sure. I know, and I haven't done it, and it would be good numbers to have. We just haven't gotten to that point yet.
Okay.
If Sam has it, I'll contact him and see if he has done an analysis there. But as far as the city, we have not done that.
Yeah. That'd be great, because I know there's been some questions of why is the city using funds, for the convention center? And I think we have all the logical reasons why. I mean, it was a huge benefit to keep it open versus closing it. So,
And
The
the
loss of-
comparison is economic impact versus what you
Right.
see here. So what did it do for the rest of our businesses that's unseen on these city financials? Kind
that's
of.
exactly right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a comment from me, Jamie. When Sam did his report before us, talking about the needed funds, he related some of those figures. What if, and he also gave projections on the economic benefits. So I'm sure he has some figures like that.
He's also going to be doing his year-end analysis before the board on the 23rd of February. So I'll contact him as well, see if maybe he
Yeah.
can put some of those numbers in.
Be great.
Okay, so we'll move on to the tourism fund. 7.9 million in revenues versus 11.6. As we all know, that is due to quite a bit of a decrease, 39%. So that's the drop in revenue. Our expenditures, 4.5 million versus 8.1. And one of those things is, as a result of COVID, we haven't transferred out as much to the chamber. Now, I will tell you that for December, it's quite a bit larger, and they've submitted quite a bit more expenditures. So you'll see this change in December. But also, I want to point out that the debt service, we paid off a debt service in 2019 and also in 2018. So the debt service and the principal category, you'll see stay around about $1.5 million less.
Jamie, how does this, under the revenue tax and franchise fees, this is through November, it's showing that we're down, is it, well, we're not down 58%. That's the percent we've used.
Right. And that's also over budget. Keep in mind, when we did the COVID financials in May, we also reduced that budget. That's the approved budget amount for 2020, but that does not reflect the COVID. So that'd be the percent of budget used. So does that help answer that? That is a reflection of your taxes. The only other thing that I would think would be just an anomaly is that intergovernmental 101,000 there. And that is some money that we received back from a sewer project that came out of the tourism fund. So.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah,
That's okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
You're welcome. The next is the expenditures. I've already gone over the expenditures, so we'll go to the other financing sources. 1.5 million versus 2.2 million. Again, there's debt service in there. There's also the transfer in from the CID, which is great on that one, but the debt service in there does have an impact on that due to COVID. The ending result is the unreserved fund balance is 16.2 million in the tourism fund. Unless there's any other questions, we will keep moving. Okay, here's the transportation fund, 4.8 million versus 5.6 in the revenues from last year. The expenditures were 2.265 versus 3.2 from last year as well. So they did do a good job of keeping their expenditures down in light of the reduced taxes here. And then you'll see the other financing sources is 2 million versus 2.2. Again, there's some TIF debt service there as well. And then the ending result is 2.8 million in unreserved fund balance. Is there any questions for the transportation fund? Okay, we'll keep moving. This next one is the TIF debt service. This reflects pretty much the landing TIF and the hills. So you're at 10.3 million in revenue versus 11.1 million there. And then your expenditures are 18.3 versus 11 million from last year as well. Keep in mind the 18, and I've said this happened many months ago, but the 7 million that we paid over as a result of closing out and refinancing that one debt service that was held That is included in that $14 million. So that is all accounted for. The ending fund balance in your debt service is $17.4 million. Is there any questions there? I want to point out on your other financing sources, down at the very bottom, the operating transfer out to the Branson Meadows. That is that waterfall flow of funds that we have, that we, when the waterfall is met and we get to take extra steps, what that means is we had enough revenue to pay off the first 6 steps. So then we were able to flow more revenue over to the third debt structure. And this is a higher amount, and that's a higher amount due to us paying off a debt issue from last year. So if you notice, we had $646,000 that we were able to put to the third debt issue. This year we have $1.5 million, and we're going to be bringing that before the board in the form of a budget amendment in a couple of board meetings before the audit so that we can record that. But I just wanted to show you that because that is good news, that we've got the other 2 debt issues taken care of. So now we have a larger flow of funds that we, with that being said, that is also monies that we need to talk about. That's a tourism bonding capacity issue too, that will have an effect on that as well. But for now, it's very good news. So next one is the debt service fund. And this is the one that we reflect, we call it the Meadows. And if you look at it, the revenues are very small. The expenditures are $612,066 versus last year's $652. And this is all a debt service, and this is how we track the debt service for that TIF. And the other financing sources are $3.3 million versus $2.4 last year. The ending result there is $5,014,048. The next one, we'll just keep moving. I'll try to get through these a little bit quicker. Apologize for taking so much time, but the capital projects fund, 140 is what we call it. This is very small, didn't get used very much. As a result of COVID, we reduced all our capital expenditures. Capital outlay, 268, 651 versus last year's 738. That is as a result of COVID. Your other financing sources were very small. Some of the transfer ends, and then your ending result, the fund balance there is 869, 227. And I will say that fund balance, that's as a result of, we have projects set up in this fund. Okay, so some of the projects are ongoing, they're in CIP right now, and those monies are captured in that fund balance. Okay. The next one is the perpetual fund. That's very small. We'll move on to the Parks and Rec fund. That's 230. That's another fund that we always keep a close eye on. The total revenues for 2020 as of the November 30th is 1.4 million versus 1.8 million of last year. And our expenditures are 1.9 versus 2.3. So if you do the math, you'll see that they tried very hard to keep their expenditures low, just as the other departments did, to reflect the reduction of their revenues. The transfer in, again, we had to reduce their transfer in by 25%, the same we did with public safety. So you'll see that reflected in those numbers as well. Their unreserved fund balance as of end of November is 912,000. Any questions on that fund? Okay, we'll just move on to the water sewer operations. That is just a combination of everything we just talked about. So water sewer fund 620 is what we'll move to next, Melissa. Okay. Total revenues, 8,599,000 versus last year, 8,640,000. And keep in mind, we did do the percent increases this year. However, you're about to see the consumption reports, and our consumption is quite a bit down for the year. That's why you'll see the reduction in their revenues. Also, the expenditures are 10.6 million versus 11 million from last year. Again, note that we did the same operational increases, such as merit raises and those kind of things. So they did a good job reflecting that their expenditures are down versus last year. So keep that in mind when you're looking at those numbers as well. The unreserved fund balance is 62,390,000. I need to add in there that this unreserved fund balance is not cash spend. this unreserved fund balance, a majority of it is assets accounted for. So it's not spendable money. Their cash spend here, you'll see it on their balance sheet, okay? But some people look at that 62 million and think, ooh, we got a lot of money in that. Those are assets, the value of the assets that are accounted for in that number, okay?
Jamie, on that, in fact, does that apply also to all of these unreserved fund balances, that the percentage of that is actually cash and another percent is assets?
No, sir, not all of them, because this is a proprietary fund and governmental funds don't. We record assets through our fixed asset system, but they do not hit the financials. Now on the tourism fund, you will see it a little bit higher, but a portion of that is reserved for debt service from the debt. So you have a restriction there, a cash restriction, because those are debt service reserves that are built into that number. Some of the funds will have that, but the water sewer fund is a proprietary fund, and that's the one that you'll notice that a large amount of that is assets.
I think this came up once before. I think it'd be healthy if we could see in these fund balances how much of that is actual assets and how much of it is cash.
Yes, sir. I believe I sent that out.
Did you send it?
I did, but I can resend it. I don't have a problem doing that. It shows you down at the bottom of the budget worksheet what the debt service is, what the assets is, what the restriction, and then the cash spend. But I'll find it and resend it. That's not a problem for me at all.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Okay, so the next one is just the capital fund for water sewer. And there's two capital funds, 145, 146, and 145 is the large capital. And that comes from tourism dollars. 146 is operational or smaller capital. And that comes from the operations of water sewer. Not a lot going on in there, similar to the other capital fund, just because we reduced a large portion of our capital as a result of COVID. The ending balance for the 145 is 7 million, 7.7. The ending balance for the 146 is 843. Now, with that being said, those are the ones, excuse me for a minute. Those are the ones that will have capital projects tied to them, these capital funds, but there is some additional money in that capital reserve because capital projects were set up, but then they went away and never came to fruition. So there's a little bit of extra money in there, but not a lot because there's capital projects tied to that. Okay, so the next one, we'll just keep moving. Internal service funds. These are 601. As if you recall, we set up internal service funds, thankfully, a few years back, and they're reflected as 601, 602, 603. We set up one for the Parks and Rec Fund. We set up one for the Public Safety Fund, Water, Sewer, and even the General Fund. And we had been trying to transfer money in there. As a result of COVID, some of those transfers went away, but we still had some money in there from the previous year. So I'll go through those very quickly. The 601 fund unreserved balance is 968,000. That's for water sewer. And also I want to tell you that keep in mind the what comes out of these internal service funds right now is the lease, the vehicle lease. So what we do is we, when we buy new vehicles for the vehicle lease, whatever was budgeted based on the expense of those cars, we move that amount of money to the appropriate internal service fund so that we can account for the leases over the next 3 to 5 years out of that, and it does not reflect their operational fund. We account for those in the internal service fund so that you can see where those leases are, and year over year, it won't have an impact on the operations of that fund. So we do that in every fund, public safety, water, sewer, parks, if they have vehicles. So you'll see some of those expenses, but that's what they are right now, is those vehicle leases. So unreserved fund balance for water sewer, like I said, 968,546. For public safety, it's at 167,569. Parks, you're at 133,576. Transportation's internal service fund, you're at 160,817. General fund, you're at $98,089. And that is the internal service funds. And we're thankful because some of the things through COVID has come up in a time where we don't have extra money to spend. We did have those internal service, a little bit of savings where if it was a smaller dollar amount, the departments had that to go back out and get what they needed in the event that they needed it. So that has been already a blessing to us. Okay, so the next reports are the balance sheets. And as I tell you all the time, and if I get too repetitive, just feel free to say, Jamie, we know that. But I just wanted to help you guys understand that if you ever want to check me in these reports, make sure that the financials that I just presented to you, the fund balance should tie to the fund balance on these balance sheets. There is a caveat there in that the general fund and the public safety fund won't tie, but it's due to minor funds that are wrapped up in that fund balance. So for the general fund, you've got courts fund is a minor fund. You've got a safety fund, which is a minor fund, and that's the safety dollars that we get as a result of our safety officers and what they do and apply for that money. So those are minor funds that are wrapped up in that general fund balance, okay? The public safety fund also has the same thing, and we get a reconciliation every month so that we can make sure it ties. But for those of you who were unaware, we have an inmate security fund, we have the DARE fund, we have a forfeiture fund, we have a police training fund, we have a shop with a cop fund. All of those are minor funds, but we have to have separate funds specifically for tracking of those. And those are wrapped up in that fund balance as well. So that'll be the difference. And remember, we do a reconciliation for those just to make sure those tie out. But everything else, the transportation fund, the tourism fund, the convention center fund, make sure you look at the fund balances from the financials and make sure that they tie back. If they don't, feel free to reach out and ask me. I am happy to help answer any of those questions. Also, we have another report that we do, an operating cash fund report. And that also helps you tie that report back to the balance sheet. So the three of them all link together, and it helps you see that the monies that we're reporting to you are also in our bank account and that the fund balance. So when you look at them, and you want a way to try to combine them all together and tie them all together, that is a really good way to do that. And if you need some help, feel free to come in and sit down with me. I'll help walk you through it, no problem.
Jamie, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other items that you need to bring up to us other than going on into the review of reimbursements, disbursements, and approval of disbursements 15 and over?
No, sir. Just are we at the other reports, just the other informational reports that I put, or is that next, Melissa?
Yes, they come after the financials.
Okay. So the disbursements are a little bit later, but these,
Okay.
I've got the business license classification reports, and really, we don't have to discuss those unless you have any questions. We just put these out there. We started doing it this past year just for informational purposes for you all. I just realized I use these reports for my review that you all might wanted to see what else the finance department does. So here's a reflection. These are just reports. We give you the business license, the liquor license, also the bids and the RFPs that we have put out, and the consumption reports. The consumption reports are really beneficial when you're looking at the water sewer funds to see and reflect how those revenues are coming in and what's happening in the world of our water sewer. And COVID really had an impact on the water sewer funds. So it's also a good analytical piece that if you want to dive into it a little bit more, it's extremely interesting on how all that fits together. So I just wanted to put that out there. I don't need any further discussion on it unless you have questions, but I will try to just keep those coming for you all. Again, they're just informational pieces for you if you wanted to look at them.
I think it's great resource information to let us know what's going on. And it's interesting to look at the different business classifications and the number of new and the number that have been in existence. So thank you for that additional support information.
Yes, sir.
Anything else?
That's all I had for those reports.
All right. Now is it time to review the disbursements and approval of over 15,000?
And I'll just take any questions that any of you all have here.
Any questions from these reports that you have?
This is Pam. I'll make a motion to accept the over 15,000.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it. This is Larry.
There's a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Simmons,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Milton,
Yes.
Pinkley,
Yes.
Yancey,
Yes.
Dobbins.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And number 4 under the agenda is a project status report.
And this is the project status report that we have before you every month. There's not a lot going on in there. It reflects the downtown major project and the 76 major project. Again, wasn't a lot going on in 2020, so I will just go over the balances with you. The Highway 76 was 22.9 million to date, and it was 12.8 million for the downtown. Again, there's not a whole lot going on, but as we start to see it pick up, we'll start to add to this report. But it's just front and center for you in case you have any questions or want anything else as it relates to those projects.
Excuse me, Jamie.
Yes, sir.
How much are we budgeting for 2021 for the 76 project?
I don't think I will double check, but to my knowledge, we didn't budget anything for that. As you know, 2020 is a bare minimum budget, basically a status quo budget to get through because we are unsure of the economy. So we didn't budget any large capital.
So
But
the CI,
I will double check that to make sure, but I'm fairly certain that's the answer.
okay, but the 76 CID is bringing in revenues now, right?
Yes, sir.
And so that's the monies that we're transferring to try to continue to do some more of the improvements like the design work and that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's the budget amendment that we just brought before you on
Yeah.
Tuesday night, the 230,000. And as they elect and as they approve that monies, I will bring it back before the board for approval in the form of a budget amendment. But there's a process in that where they have to decide and approve on that first, and then we'll move forward.
Okay, if you get rid of COVID, we could start doing some of those improvements.
Well, I'm doing my best.
Any other questions or comments? Any of the members of the committee have any comments they'd like to make?
This is Michael. I just wanted to make one quick little comment, I guess. First of all, for those, well, for everyone, these reports are voluminous in terms of the amount of actual digits, the numbers that are in them. And so I recognize the finance department for the great job they do there. But the bottom line here with our current situation is that our numbers are down. And I just wanted to recognize and compliment every department and every staff member for holding the line on disbursements and expenditures. They're doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, thank you all. You all do give us very good information and answer our questions. And we've gone through a difficult time. We don't know exactly what's ahead of us. Every month is new, and we know that even on a weekly basis, things change. So we'll just deal with it as we get to it. But I think we've done a good job of reporting, keeping information available to the public, and we will do the best we can do with what we have to work with. Willing to accept a motion for adjournment.
Oh, can I do a director's report real quick?
Oh, did I miss
I'm
that?
sorry.
It says reports, but I didn't tie that to you.
I
Good.
know it was kind of confusing the way it's laid out, but I have a few things that I'd like to go over if that's okay.
Please.
Okay. PBB, this is the year for our thorough review of the programs that we're doing. So I wanted to keep that out in front of you to say some of the things that we've talked about. If any of you would like to sit on any other peer review when we're going through, we have those 10 goals, and you all have done an amazing job with the capital and the review there. If you would like to sit in on another peer review, we have the peer review group set up for each of the 10 goals. So when we're selecting that peer review, if y'all want to be included on that, please just let me know. I think it would be a great thing for the finance committee to be involved in that, because you already understand it, you already know how it works, and you see what happens there. So as we get ready, this is the big year for that, to go through the programs, to go through all of that. So anyway, I just want to keep that in front of you as an option. Also, we're watching our investment income very closely. As you know, the markets are not great right now, but we have some really good investments and they're really hanging on. So I'm really thankful for what's got going on. But I wanted to let you know that we're watching it, and we're having meetings on a weekly basis to track the markets and to track what's going on in the financial market so that we can be on top of that. We have some of our reserves that are wrapped up in that, and we are doing well with our investment income right now, but we're going to keep watching that. So I just want to keep that front and center. And around March, our March Finance Committee, I'm trying to get our investment, I just call him our investment guy. His name is Patrick, but I'm trying to get him to do a meeting with you all so that he can walk you through those as well. I know that that's important to you all. And right now, I wanted him to come down, but due to COVID, they're not allowed to come down. So we may just have him virtually. But nonetheless, it would still be good to keep him in front of y'all. So that's coming. Also, what I just talked about earlier about the mandatory, the waterfall, the 1.5 million that we're able to transfer over to another debt, that's coming in the form of a budget amendment before the board so that we can take care of that. Our auditors are going to be here for field work, first day, March 29th, for the 2020 audit. That's always exciting. And also the new TIF update. So you know that the aquarium opened up. Great place. We're very excited to have that. But that is a TIF. That is another TIF. That is a pay-as-you-go TIF. And that's something that we have already been tracking and monitoring, certifying those expenses. But as that money comes in, you'll start to see, for this year, you will see a new fund, a new TIF fund set aside for specifically the aquarium. Keep in mind, they have a 2% admin fee that comes back that will offset finance department expenses, which will be great. And then you will see the rest of that, 50% of that go into TIF, and that'll be 50% more income coming in for the general fund. So keep that in mind, because as we get new developments, that's new monies for the city, which is always very, very helpful. But I wanted to keep that front and center for you because money has already started coming in, and it's going to start picking up with the February receipts and those kind of things. So just want to let you know that we're tracking that similar to we track the other funds. We're secluding that, and we'll be paying those certified expenses out as they come in. And then one other thing I just wanted to say, keep in front of you that the tourism tax bonding capacity renewal is coming up. So I can't say too much more about that, just that there's a lot of impact that will be on this city if the results are a negative result. So I just want to keep that front and center for you all, just to make sure that you're aware of that. So that is my report. Thank you all for coming. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. We're happy to answer them. Thank you, Mayor.
Excuse me, Jamie,
Yes, sir.
would you add me to that peer review committee, please?
Yes, certainly will.
Thank-
I will select one and we'll just put you on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor,
Thank
this is Bob.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question of Jamie? In looking at going to our agenda center, I can't get the 2021 meetings on there, like the finance committee. I can get the old ones, the 2020s. So of course we're accessing them through your emails. However, the public can't access them through your emails. So am I missing something, or is the public right now not able to get 2021?
That is a good question. I will ask Lisa that. I am not as familiar with this Prime Gov. We've had training and stuff, and we go through and put the reports out, but I will reach out to Lisa as soon as we're done and ask her. I know it's posted on the web, and because I go through and look on the web and see it, and she posts it out there as normal. So I know it's out there for everybody to see.
Okay, if we go to the regular place we would go for it would be the Agenda Center, which you would go, there's the same thing for the Board of Aldermen meetings.
Right.
The backup data and all, you're just not able to get those unless I'm missing something when I'm looking at them.
I think Melissa's pulling it up right now. I pulled them up this morning, but maybe, I don't know. Let's see.
Okay, so when you go to Finance Committee here,
Mhm.
you can view all agendas and minutes. And then here is, it's showing live right now. And if you select this HTML agenda packet, when you click on it here, it will have a staff report and then it will have all the attachments that will open up.
Okay, thank you. I previously tried exactly that and I did not get anything in clicking on that. So
yeah, and
so
you
thank
can download it or you can just view it too. So
Mhm.
you don't actually have to download the item.
Yes, I've been able
Okay.
to see them, but I haven't go through emails that come to me that don't come to the general public. So
Right.
so apparently whatever it is working now. So I thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bob.
Melissa.
Any other? Are we to the point to willing to accept a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion? There's a second. Roll call vote, please.
Simmons,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Milton,
Yes.
Pinkley,
Yes.
Yancey,
Yes.
and Dobbins.
Yes.
All
Meeting
right,
adjourned.
Thank y'all.